Kelsey McKinney is the author of New York Times and USA Today bestseller. You didn't hear this from me. Mostly true notes on gossip. We have the book right here. Co-owner and features writer at Defector and one of the co-creators of the hit podcast, Normal Gossip. Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, talk about sports gossip a little bit. It's thrilling.
Gossip to gossip.
Gossip to
it's
gossip.
A gossip trifecta.
Beautiful. That's
really
important.
Is.
We're
it
just
really
like
important.
those three women on White Lotus. Like,
except none of us voted for Trump.
Correct.
And none of us are blonde.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It is what it is. Kelsey, we'll dive right in. Our first question is, you write about the parasocial nature of celebrity gossip. How do you think sports gossip differs, if in any way, or are there any ways that it's similar, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. So something I think about a lot with sports that's so interesting is that athletes do not have to have a parasocial relationship with fans for them to do their careers, right? Like Taylor Swift is posting on Instagram, maybe not Taylor because she's very famous now, but like Sabrina Carpenter is posting on Instagram in a way that is like similar to the way that your friends post on Instagram. Athletes are posting like images that I assume are given to them by the marketing department. Like they are clearly branded. They are not like, here is my personal life. Most of them, some of them are obviously doing some of that, Bryce Harper. But I think it's really fascinating that they exist in this space where they are celebrities and they are known, quote unquote known, but they don't have to do as much of the intimacy work as other kinds of artists do.
Yeah. That's such a great way of putting it. I mean, I think, too, I wonder how traditional gender dynamics play into it.
Absolutely.
Because we always talk about here how sports has historically been socially acceptable gossip for men.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of what we're trying to do is talk about sports in a way that we would talk about sports to each other and do, even when we don't have microphones. And I'm interested in, like, how does the way we talk about sports affect who feels invited in?
Oh, yeah. This is like, I loved when you guys started this because it's a joke I've been making for like a couple of years where I'll be at a bar and some man will be like, what do you do? What are you working on? And I would tell them, you know, I'm writing this book about gossip. And they would say, oh, I don't care about gossip. And I would be like, oh my God, did you hear that Patrick Mahomes got traded? And then they would be so locked in instantly. And I would be like, well, it seems like you do care about this. It's just that you've like relegated this topic to a specific amount of people or a very specific tone even. And it's like trade rumors are absolutely gossip. Talking about whether or not the team is going to be good is gossip, right? Like sports gambling based on people's birthdays is gossip, right? Like you can gossip about sports in any number of ways. And I think there's such a self-seriousness to the way that some people talk about sports. And I think it resembles almost politics, where politicians and political talking heads will say, this isn't gossip, this is reporting. And it's like, but it's an anonymous source and you're 2 degrees removed. So like that's actually, and it's wrong, right? So that's actually gossip.
No, it's true. I do feel like to your answer earlier about just kind of the parasocial nature of relationships and how it doesn't really exist in sports. I feel like how it does show up in sports is via these documentaries. These kind of odd, like puff piece documentaries for athletes. Like we've talked about this pretty extensively, this Aaron Rodgers documentary, Enigma. I don't know if you had the pleasure of watching that. But it's interesting because that feels like the space where you kind of get this like intimate look at their lives, but it's through this curated lens, almost in the same way you get this curated lens with those marketing images that the team gives to them to post on Instagram. Like
I don't know if either of you have watched Drive to Survive.
Yes.
But the F1 Drive to Survive is incredibly gossipy. Like the way that show is produced is just about like which of these rich dudes hates each other. And that is why people love it. Like it's why I got into F1 because I was suddenly like, oh, these two guys are enemies. Okay, I'm interested, right?
Yeah.
Like
totally. I mean, it's all of it feels like, I don't know, having worked in sports media, like the trenches of sports media, and found myself talking about sports the way men want me to talk about sports, I realize that a lot of it is taking out anything that seems fun, right? It's what you said, the self-seriousness. And like, I think the docs even, it's like, here's a little crumb of something quirky. And you're like, oh, and it feels new because like, you know, you sit there behind the sports desk and you're like, and the injury report today. And it's like, can be so much more. And I'm curious what your relationship, I know you're a huge Philly sports fan.
Yeah, I am.
But, I would love to know, like, what was the first sports gossipy thing that really grabbed you?
Ever.
Yeah.
So I grew up a baseball fan and I grew up in Texas. So I grew up a Rangers fan, and the first one I can remember, my like memory of childhood is very poor, but the first one I can remember is actually Gabe Kapler. Because when Gabe Kapler was in the outfield for the Rangers in like a million years ago, there were all of these women in their 20s who had these signs that were like Gabe's babes because he was hot. And so they were like, we're out here for Gabe Kapler. And because I have long loved to adopt just like the most spare baseball player in the world and be like, I'm going to be in love with him even when he goes to Japan and like has to play there for 3 years, I was like, yeah, Gabe Kapler, baby. Like I'm locked in. And I remember like being obsessed with like, okay, does he have a wife? Does he have a girlfriend? And I was like 10 because I was like, well, all these girls are here. Are they here on a mission that is real, or are they here as a bit? Right? Like it could be either.
Or what's going on here?
Yeah, it's 100 degrees and you're in the outfield. Like you're very brave.
Really quick, Gabe Kapler, my mom, when he was on the Red Sox, my mom's favorite player as a Jewish woman, because he was like, he asked a rabbi, like, should I play on Yom Kippur in 2004? And the rabbi in Boston was like, we need you to, like, God needs you to play for the Red Sox more than he needs you to go to synagogue. And I was like, my mom was like, this is the guy.
That's the guy.
Yeah,
that's the guy.
I think people often say about stuff like that, they're like, oh, well, that doesn't matter. That like isn't important. But like it does matter. It matters to the way that they play the game. And like that, I was joking about sports gambling earlier, but like my coworkers make fun of me because I make a lot of money whenever I sports gamble, because I sports gamble based on entirely like stupid shit. Like I'm like, someone's wife is pregnant. It's time. It's time to bet.
We talk about that all the time. We talk about all the time that like so much of sports is vibes and what's going on off the field. To your point, to make these decisions, like we talk about like during these like halftime broadcasts when they're talking about why is this team not playing well, whatever. Like we talked about this during the Super Bowl. Like the Chiefs weren't playing well, and Charlotte and I were like, the vibes were off. Like, it seemed like there were some interpersonal dynamics at play that like things were just not quite aligning, and it maybe doesn't necessarily have to do with like how many completions a player has. You know?
I mean, like, I bet on Cooper DeJean's interception in the Super Bowl, which, as you may have guessed,
his birthday.
Because it was his birthday, and because I was like, he hasn't had one yet. And there's something about like getting a first interception in the Super Bowl on your birthday that I was like, he's gonna do it.
He's gonna
do
it.
He's gonna do it. But it's like that's all vibes.
Yeah. It's all vibes.
It's vibes only.
And you were on the right side of the vibes with the. I mean,
I love bragging.
The Eagles vibes were so good. They were so good, and the Chiefs vibes were so bad, and like so much of everything that we talk about.
Yeah.
And I say this to Madeline all the time, and people on the show are probably sick of me saying this, but like I used to think that people in charge of sports knew more than I did.
Oh, yeah.
And the moment I realized was when actually Buck Showalter, who was the manager of the Orioles at the time, did not pitch Zach Britton in a wild card game in 2016 because he wanted to save him for the next round, but it was an elimination game. And I was like, you didn't play him so that you could get to the next round, but you didn't get to the next round because you didn't play. And I was like, people just don't know what they're doing.
No.
Yeah.
It's vibes.
No. It's vibes only. And I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people who claim to be like stats people are actually operating on vibes, right? They'll say like, well, the stats say that after the All-Star break, this team has been really good, but I've been watching them and they don't feel good. And it's like, well, that's a vibe.
That's
like,
a vibe.
You're rejecting data in favor of the guys look sad, which is also data. It's just a different kind.
No, it is a different type of data. Well, you mentioned Philly sports for a second, and we obviously need to get into it. You are a huge Philly sports fan. I must ask, how did you get into Philly sports in particular?
So this is a really controversial opinion I have, actually. So I apologize to the listeners who will be mad at me. But I think that if you move somewhere, you should root for those teams.
Whoa.
It is
okay.
It is a home team belief. I moved to Philadelphia. I'm planning to die here. Why would I continue to root for any team I rooted for in my childhood? That makes no sense to me. Like the team that is here is my team. I'm also lucky to have grown up a Rangers fan, which is an American League team. So that helps, right? Like I'm not moving into a rival city. But I adopted all the teams when I moved here because I was like, well, this is my home. and I care about my community, and this is how I connect with other people, right? You go to the sandwich shop, you're like, thank you so much for my sandwich, go Birds, goodbye, right?
Right.
This might be the healthiest take on sports fandom
Yeah.
I've ever heard, because it really is about, like, instead of holding on to the childhood version of yourself. I feel it's so interesting because, like, my husband, I live in Brooklyn. My husband's a huge Knicks fan, and I find myself, and I'm a Celtics fan, and and I find myself being sympathetic to the Knicks, or being like, oh, they're fun right now, and then feeling so guilty about it, and then being like, I'm a bad sports fan,
You're a bad Boston fan.
Yeah, because these are, like, very male rules, I feel like, have been put.
Right. It's like your father's team is your team.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
I also feel like your response is a very grown up, mature response, because I feel like the people, no shade to anyone, no shade. You can like whatever team you want, but the people who still like their childhood team, it's the same people who, like, peak in high school. Like, they still, like, they never got other friends besides their high school friends. It's like, branch out, explore new teams, explore new places, like, learn about other chants for teams.
It is so evolved.
It's evolved.
I don't know. I mean, I think if I had stayed where I had grown up, I would have kept the teams, right? Like because I think that, like, there just is a huge benefit to rooting for the team where you live. And I think if I was going to be here, if I was, I'm going to be here for a year, I probably wouldn't switch teams. But I'm planning to be here forever, so I'm locked in. Like,
there's also it's also sometimes, like, I have a Pavlovian response when, like, I see the Patriots take the field. And I think it's also because they were good, and I've rooted for them,
for a long time. Yeah.
But, like, I see the uniforms, and I'm like, oh, I'm home. And then I'm like, do I have a sickness? Like, so it's
my bodily ailment.
Yeah. Am I well? Right. Exactly.
Who knows?
I think baseball. So I didn't grow up an NFL fan, so this helps me, right? Like, I grew up NCAA football only in the South, and so I, like, didn't care about the NFL, so that helps in some senses. But baseball is a sport that really rewards you to pay attention to your local team, because the only games on TV are the local team's games.
Yes.
And what are you going to do? Like, not go to the baseball game because your team isn't in town? It's like, just take the team that's here. It's fine. Sometimes they're bad.
Yeah, and that's okay. And the sign of a true fan is if you stick with them when they're bad.
Yeah, this is my one true beef, is that I don't have a WNBA team. And I'm like, when I lived in DC, I had the Mystics, and I was, like, very committed to the Mystics, and now I've been betrayed.
Would you stay with them, or would you, like, you're probably closest to the Liberty now?
Yeah, I mostly just feel deep sadness in my heart to not have a WNBA team.
All right, Philly, get on it.
Get on
Great
it.
gossip
Franchise.
in the WNBA.
Oh, so much
The best. Truly the best. I can't wait for the season to start.
A league where people kiss each other. Mwah.
More.
I love it.
more kissing.
We need. Can you imagine if, like, we knew that, like, players on the Eagles were
my
kissing?
God.
That would be.
It would be amazing.
I mean, that would be
Or
a
their
whole thing, but
exes,
I
if
would-
there were exes on the same team.
I know. Getting
good.
traded to a team with your ex's best friend. Oof.
Really
That's
good.
the shit we like.
Andy Cohen couldn't write that. What is your favorite storyline in Philly sports lore?
Ooh. Well, I'm a new Phillies fan, so this is a question that is probably not correct for me to answer. What is my favorite
Or for
storyline?
your experience, right? Like, even right now, like,
Yeah.
what's most interesting to you in Philly sports?
Okay, this is just a theory that I have that's not based in anything except for vibes. But for several years, the Phillies, when they have won big games in the playoffs, have played Dancing on My Own, which is a song that they have chosen, except it's a cover, and it's a version of Dancing on My Own sung by a man. And I fully believe in my heart that they won't win the series until they convert to the Robin version. And, like, I will go to my grave saying this, because I'm like, there's something cursed about using a version of Dancing on my own that is sung by a man.
1,000%.
When do they use the
correct.
song?
At the end of the game,
Just at
if
the
they
end,
win
if they
in
win.
the playoffs only.
Okay, I have so many questions. Who on God's green earth was like, we should play Dancing on My Own? Find a man singing it. Like,
Right.
I didn't know a man sang it.
We have this, the Phillies, I shouldn't say we, the Phillies have this backup catcher, which is an insane phrase on its own, named Garrett Stubbs, who is like 5'8" and is just like the heartthrob of every woman in Philadelphia. Like,
Great.
they love him, and it is like him. He is the one who makes the playlist.
He did that, probably. Garrett Stubbs. Too.
He made
is
this
he
mistake.
singing it?
No, it's like a real cover by like some artist, but I'm
Maybe
like, this is cursed, in my opinion. You can't win the series until you get rid of this.
No, I agree. Maybe it's some sort of licensing issue where they can't
Yeah,
their music
maybe.
budget for the end of playoff game win song. They can't afford
Would pay more.
pay more. It's like they're paying their players plenty of money. Come on, like let's just
Yeah.
increase that marketing budget a
you
little
see
bit.
what Steve Cohen's doing with the Mets. Shell out a little
Yeah,
bit.
come
Or
on.
switch songs.
Right,
Like, I'm like,
right.
there's just something particularly cursed to me about using this anthem by a man. I'm like, mm-mm.
I also want
Get
to
me
know
outta here.
how did they end up choosing that song, and what was the short list of other songs?
I know.
with covers by men. That like I feel like it was like "Shake It Off" or that'd be for a loss. That would be for a loss.
Yeah, that
Or,
would
like
be
some
for
Taylor
loss,
Swift
yeah.
cover,
Right,
of
by
I
a
don't even
man.
know what. Yeah, like just
Yeah, exactly.
Like what is the short list here that got them to that song?
What do
Yeah,
you
I have
think,
no idea.
Kelsey? What song would you choose? Not, obviously they should play the Robin version to
Yes.
win the World Series, but if there had to be another song, what do you think that song should be?
Oh my God, that's such a hard question.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm like, do I know any other songs? Right? Like in this moment, I'm like, is there a
See,
single song I can remember?
Yeah, it's not fair of me to do that to you because I'm the same way. I'd be like, I've never
Yeah.
heard another song in my life.
The first
I
song
don't know
that popped
music.
into my head is like a deep cut on an early Beyonce album, which is School in Life.
Wow.
And I'm like, you could really, I think, get down to that in a stadium if
I think
someone
that
was
would be
brave
great.
enough.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
but it has to be the original. I don't feel
Yes,
like a male
no
cover would work.
covers.
no cover, no cover.
You do I always thought it'd be really funny if teams played more classical music, like after a loss, like Mozart's
Tchaikovsky.
Requiem. Yeah, it's just like, oh, and then they win, and it's like the Four Seasons, and you're like, oh. Anyway.
Classical music jokes here from Charlotte.
Sorry. It's in my blood. So I feel like gossip-wise, Kelsey, this is, I've just been so excited to have you on because obviously your podcast, Normal Gossip, which you are no longer the host of, which I also
Yes.
think is a very amazing thing to do in
Thank you.
media. Were there any stories you did? I've listened to so many of them, but now I'm sort of blanking that had any sports connections at all?
We had a few recreational league stories.
Yeah.
Like we had a kickball story.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
What's funny is with sports story, we did not get a lot of sports story submissions unless they were recreational or children's. So like kids soccer is a huge topic in gossip because it's like all of these parents around the country are investing all of their time and energy in trying to make their child the next Alex Morgan and then are just like creating chaos.
Yes.
And so we got quite a lot of that. Yeah.
That's so
Did
good.
you grow up playing competitive sports? Because I know I played competitive year-round volleyball, and so experience. Not that I don't know who was trying to make us a famous volleyball player.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the parents were, but there was so much drama between the parents of what Hilton Garden
Yeah.
Inn are you staying at, or the Hampton Inn? Like when we would
Yeah.
do these travel tournaments. I'm curious as a kid.
Oh,
did
you're
you-
fancy. You're at the window.
Oh,
yeah.
watch out. The
Yeah.
DoubleTree. Did you play any sort of competitive sports or were part of anything that warranted itself towards gossip because of just like the group dynamics? involved?
Yeah, I played softball until I was about 15.
And volleyball, right? Isn't
And I played volleyball in middle school, but just like on
Okay.
the school team. I'm kind of
Okay.
short, so I was never a prolific volleyball player.
Did you have gossip? I feel like so much of my sports experience was just like gossip. Like I
Yes.
wasn't great on the team. Like I wasn't bad, but I was never the best one.
Yeah.
And
same.
so I was like the
Yeah.
personality hire of the sports team, and like
Yeah.
that was such a formative experience. And I feel like, do you think that for a lot of people kind of is a place, you write in the book about how gossip is a way of like grooming, the way monkeys will groom each
Yeah.
other. It's like the language that people share. I feel like sports, and I'd love to know if you agree, can be that sort of foundational point for a lot of people.
I think they can in terms of like from the very beginning, you're gossiping about who's going to make the team, right? That's the first gossip is like who's in and who's out, who's A team, who's B team, right? And even I'm thinking about like when we would roll up to play some team we hadn't played before and you like would watch them warm up. and be like, okay, so she's weak. We're going to hit all the balls at her. Right. Like it's like, and like that's a form of gossip, right? To be like, we're taking this observation, we're going to spread it amongst the team.
Yeah.
And then we're going to use it to our advantage to win, which is like, well, you could also fake that, I guess, by like pretending to be bad during warm-ups, which would be a great move.
I would love
but
that.
Like, but like scouting is a great example of gossip in sports, right? Like that's entirely gossip, basically. Like we think this person will become a good player. Yeah, I think it's possible that like your love for gossip can come from sports. And also sports teams are very intimate. Like you have this kind of tight-knit, maybe kissing, maybe not intimacy.
Yes.
I said I played softball. Maybe tight intimacy. And within intimacy, there are always in-groups and out-groups. And so inherently, you're going to gossip about anyone not on the team because it's like, well, that's not us. And we are tight together.
Yeah.
Right.
We always talk about that these sports teams are just companies, like at the end of the day. And so like any company, you know, there's always the water cooler gossip you would have in a normal, traditional 9-to-5 job. That these teams still have that because at the end of the day, ultimately, they are still companies. While they're getting paid exorbitant amounts of money, it's still a company.
Yeah.
So they're still susceptible to the same like gossip in groups and out groups, like who's doing well, who's not, that anyone in any normal job would be.
Yeah.
This is something I was thinking about for you guys recently, that there's this study that shows that inside office places, if there is one person who everyone hates, the happiness quotient of the company is much higher. And if you remove that person, the happiness drops immediately because it's basically like, oh, we're all on a team against this one person. And I think about that with sports a lot because it's like, if you remove the guy that everyone on the team hates, you will break down whatever that bond is. Like what you actually need is for the guy everyone hates to get like accidentally injured. And so then he can't play anymore, but they can still hate him. Right. And like that dynamic, I think really fits for sports because it's like, yeah, if there's somebody on the team you don't like, it's us versus them, baby.
That's true. I guess this is all to say that it's better, we talk about this too, that Aaron Rodgers stay employed because everyone hates him. Not everyone, unless you're an Aaron Rodgers fan. But like he is the glue that keeps people who are fans of different teams together. Everyone like, keep this man employed so he doesn't start a podcast.
And that's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It's also anyone who's worked at a company knows the coworker friendships you carry with you are the ones who you really went through some stuff with. And you can keep sending each other, like, see what this person's up to.
Yeah. Rachel Hampton, who I handed the podcast off to, is not a sports girly. And she recently I think she blogged it also, but in our work chat, she was like, wait, when players get traded, can they trade your best friend? And we were like, yes, girl, they can. And she was like, oh my God, that's awful. And we were like, yeah, here's a bunch of teams where like they traded someone's best friend and then the team collapsed because like you broke up the core duo and now the team is just going to fail. It doesn't matter how talented they are.
No, it's true.
So they're not there to go to the Christmas party with you anymore.
Yeah. Who are you supposed to talk to?
Yeah. Something in your book that I thought was really great that you addressed was sort of the line that we're all walking when we gossip, right? Of like, what are the moral implications or what are the responsibilities we have, I guess, when we gossip? And on this show, the word gossip is in the name, and some people in sports, like other sports media people, have gotten a little nervous about it. They've been like, oh, but are you guys, like, you can't say that. And where it's like, we're actually not breaking, we're not TMZ. We are taking news and gossiping about it, right? And so, but we always try to walk this line of like being funny and punching up and holding power accountable. And like there'll be times where we're talking and one of us will, it's usually me. I'll be like, sorry, that was mean. Can we cut that?
Yeah,
like,
we got to cut it.
We got to cut that. Yeah. And I'm interested, do you have any like rules for yourself or guardrails when you talk publicly about stuff?
Yeah, you've mentioned two of them by accident already, actually. The first is that you should gossip only up or at your level, never down. Yeah. So like you cannot gossip about someone you employ.
Yep.
That I think is wrong. You can gossip about your co-manager or the person who is in charge of you, but you can't gossip down, right? And that I think also works in sports, right? Like it's like you cannot gossip about the ball girl, leave her alone, right? Like she's not involved in your shit. The other one is that you know it in your body. I think that just like instinctually when you say something that is across a line, and it's a little woo-woo, but like if you morally are like, ooh, that felt a little bad coming out of my mouth, you should probably try and take it back.
Yeah.
You should probably unsay it.
Yeah, you should probably unsay it
internal
if you
vibe
can.
check. It's just an internal vibe check. Yeah, it's true. It's like,
Yeah.
sometimes Charlotte and I will say things and I'm like, I didn't love that. I didn't love it. And then we'll just kind of know, to your point, instinctually that it's probably best if we don't keep this in.
Yeah. There's also I have a real belief that like anything that people post is fair game, right? Like if you posted it, I can talk about it. That was your choice. But it's like if someone else posts something about a famous person that wasn't their choice, I'm a little hesitant to talk about it publicly. Privately, we can go off.
The group chat is
Different story.
Yeah,
Literally.
Kelsey, we're nearing the end of our time with you here.
Terrible. Hate it.
So terrible. We have to ask, what is your favorite piece of sports gossip of all time or story that you can't get out of your head?
Okay, can I give you a sports adjacent gossip? Is
Please.
that illegal?
Perfect.
Even better.
Even better.
Okay, so famously, the Eagles just won the Super Bowl. In Philadelphia, when the Eagles win the Super Bowl, you go to Broad Street, they light fireworks off. I saw a guy with like 2 handles of vodka just like pouring them into people's mouths. Like it was chaos in like a very fun way. The next day, I had to get on a train to go to New York for work. And so I took an Uber from my house to the train station. And I get in the Uber, and the man in the front seat is like talking really, really rapidly in Spanish. And I have spent 4 years of my life to become very baby conversational in Spanish. So I don't look like I speak Spanish. I'm just going to sit quietly in the back, and I'm going to eavesdrop on this conversation that I can only hear this one side of. And so he's telling this story to his friend on the phone. And he's like, yeah, Eagles won last night. So fun. I went out to Broad Street. But when I got there, you won't guess who I see. And there's a pause. And he says a girl's name. He's like, and she was on the shoulders of boy's name. I, at this point, go in the back seat, which immediately blows my cover because this man is like, oh, you know what I'm saying. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And he was like, do you want me to get off the phone? And I was like, no,
Please keep going.
I was like,
tell me more.
Can you just
put
him on speaker? And he was like, yeah. So he puts this guy on speakerphone. What I learned from this conversation is that the girl was my driver's ex-girlfriend. And while they were dating, he had told her, like, I think you're pretty enough to go on Love Island. Which honestly is such a compliment. Like, what a compliment.
Huge. Wow.
And it got right to her head. And she was like, I'm pretty enough to go on Love Island. In fact, I'm going to break up with you and try to go on Love Island. And he was like, you know what? I respect that. It's hurtful, but whatever. And so she broke up with him to go on Love Island. And then he saw her on Broad Street on his best friend's shoulders.
Oh.
And I was like, oh. And then he was like, okay, we're here at the train station. Goodbye. And I was like,
you're like, no, wait.
You're like, can I get your number? Actually, I would love to follow up with you.
You can't be like, can you conference call me in to this conversation? So I was just like, okay, goodbye.
Oh my God. That's better than anything I ever could have dreamed of.
Anything better than any normal sports gossip, for sure.
Well, this is part of the show, right? Though
Yeah.
It's like, the gossip is on the field, but it's also off the field. It's the wags, it's everyone involved in the team, and that includes the fans.
Yeah, like we recently realized that a bunch of media outlets were misidentifying a player for, was it Ohio State, right?
Yeah, it was the quarterback of Ohio State.
Quarterback for Ohio State's girlfriend. They were all saying in all these outlets that his current girlfriend was actually his ex-girlfriend.
Under a picture of the current girlfriend, the ex name.
The label was wrong. In multiple outlets. This was not just like one random blog. It was like major sports media outlets were saying this. So Charlotte and I go on this deep dive and we're like, we've got to figure this out. So we find like the girl's Instagram and we're like pulling up side by side photos and we're like, okay,
FBI over here.
Yeah, but it's true. It's like these off the field stories, like they can encompass all different facets of off the field nonsense. Like it doesn't necessarily mean it's like has to do with what's going on with the players on the field. Like to your point, like that story, if that was between athletes, oh my God, I'm captivated, period. But if that was an athlete saying that, oh my God,
it's incredible stuff. Kelsey, obviously we're going to beg you to come back and talk to us again.
Please.
But it would be really fun to do a normal gossip style thing where people submit their like personal
love that
sports-related
idea.
gossip and we tell it to you.
Really good idea. I love that
could be
for
fun.
me.
That would be fun.
That could be fun. We'll see. Thank you so much, Kelsey McKinney, the author of the New York Times bestseller. You didn't hear this from me. Thank you so much for joining us. This was an absolute
Thank you
delight.
so much for having me. I had so much fun.
Well,
Thanks for coming on.
we'll make you come back.
Yeah.
Of course.